Neoclassical Architecture by Rocco DuPont. Neoclassical architecture is a type of building popularized in the 18th and 19th century, which features columns, blank walls, and pediments, and it was heavily influenced by ancient Greek and Roman architecture. Some other features include its huge scale, its dramatic, often intricate columns, and symmetrical, simple blank walls with geometric shapes like triangles and rectangles. Some famous examples of neoclassical architecture include the White House, which was built by James Hoagland between 1791 and 1792, the United States Capitol, built by Benjamin Henry Latrobe between 1793 and 1808, and the Paris Pantheon, which was built by Jacques-Germain Soufflet and later by Jean-Baptiste Rondelet between 1757 and 1790. One of the most important neoclassical architects was Phidias. He lived between 490 BCE and 430 BCE in Athens in Greece. He was appointed to be in charge of all artistic undertakings in the area. He's most famous for building the Parthenon, which included three very important influential monuments in ancient Greece. His Parthenon was seen as one of the greatest influences to Roman and later Western neoclassical architecture, as seen by its massive pillars and simple triangular facades. Another important neoclassical architect was John Nash, who lived between 1742 and 1835 in London. He was one of the most important architects of the Georgian and Regency eras. He's most famous for building the Buckingham Palace, but also built many important other buildings in and around London, including Regent Street, Brighton Pavilion, and the Maple Arch. If you look at the pictures on the right, you can see the pillars and the sharp geometric rectangles used throughout the building, along with many triangular pediments influenced by ancient Greek architecture. A third important neoclassical architect is Thomas Jefferson, who lived between 1743 and 1826. He lived in the early United States of America and was an important government official. He is most famous for being the third president of the U.S., but was also a very important neoclassical architect. He built the Virginia State Capitol building, his home at Montecito, Poplar Forest, the University of Virginia, and other important homes in the 13 colonies. As you can see by the pictures of his home at Montecito, Jefferson drew lots of inspiration from the columns, pediments, and arches which are highlighted by neoclassicism. Neoclassical architecture is famous for many reasons, one of which being that it is very timeless. It draws inspiration from the 5th century BCE and beyond, making it one of the most time-proven design periods. The buildings are also very grand and often are huge, which makes them very big spectacles. There aren't many criticisms for neoclassicism, but the main one is that many people think that it is too traditional, so they aren't built too much anymore. Archaeology had a great influence on neoclassicism because the study of human history was greatly popularized in the 18th and 19th centuries. This boom of interest in the ancient world and the sudden admiration of the grandeur of ancient civilization soon made its way into architecture, and neoclassicism was born. It drew roots from ancient Greek and Roman architecture, and the US government, who wanted to model their Senate after ancient Rome, implemented the pillars and blank walls of their temples and other buildings of the other ancient worlds into their own government buildings. Here are some images of what 18th century archaeology looked like and some of their archaeology tools. Neoclassicism has great influence both on other architectural styles, but also in the social political environment. In terms of its influence on architecture of the time, it was a reaction to the excessiveness of the Rococo movement in architecture, which was a style which highlighted intricate ornamental designs. Neoclassicism ended this movement with its simplicity, which ultimately killed the Baroque period in architecture. Neoclassicism's simple yet grand design created a timeless style, making it extremely popular for monuments and government buildings. Its impact on government in the 18th and 19th centuries was also great. Due to its prevalence during the 18th and 19th centuries, which was a time where there was a lot of political reform between the US, France, and Britain, many new government buildings were constructed during this time. Many of the Western government buildings of that period ended up being built in the neoclassical style, including the White House, Buckingham Palace, Palais Bourbon, and Victor Emmanuel II Monument, which is also known as the Altar of the Fatherland. Neoclassical architecture flourished in the Western world, particularly in Italy, France, Britain, and the US. These places, all undergoing political reform during the mid-18th century throughout the 19th century, used the timeless design style for nearly all of their government buildings constructed during the time. The style was also used for many monuments at the time, such as French Pantheon and the Thomas Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. There are also some important German buildings designed in this style, such as the Reichstag. The style never truly faded out, as there are still some newer buildings built in this style, such as the Lincoln Memorial, which was built in the early to middle 20th century, and many state and county government buildings built during a similar period and even today that are built in this style. However, most new government buildings today are built in a more contemporary style, favoring a more utilitarian approach to their buildings over the more traditional look of neoclassicism. In fact, in 2020, the President Donald Trump actually made an executive order to make all new federal government buildings built in this style, but the order was eventually removed by the Biden administration.
Thanks for watching.